What's good, everybody? What's good, everybody? Check it out. We're gonna wait just a couple seconds here so we can get this thing started.
Everything must change.
Straight Out University, Big John is the host with the plan. Time to wake the sleeping giant that lives in every man. Forget the ordinary path, that blueprint's outdated. We building legends here, totally self-created. You need the 4 pillars for total fulfillment. Money, muscle, frame in the game, that's the mission. Master your finances, forge your body, your mindset. Level up your influence, make them all respect. Yet, stop settling for a life that's just a faded dream. Time to build your empire, make your own world shine supreme. This is the goal, let's get to work. Yeah, Straight Out University.
What's good, everybody? Check it out. It is Sunday night, so we working hard as usual. Check it out. I am your host, Big John, and welcome to Straight Out University. We have a couple of topics that we're going to talk about. One, I find very interesting, this new thing going on with Cesar Chavez and all of the, just all of the ratchetness that's happening and everything going on, the accusations and, a lot of people pushing back, give you a little bit of a personal experience. The other day I was at a coffee shop, grabbing some coffee, kind of hanging out, reading some, stuff and watching some videos. And this elderly man asked me, hey, what do you think about the Chavez thing? And I told him, I don't know. And this was about, I think it was a day or two after the incident had gone public and the New York Times article came out and Dolores Huerta came out and said her piece. And, this guy right away starts off with, hey, so what do you mean you don't know? How do you not know? Are you for, pedophiles? And I was like, no, did I say that? And he's like, well, you're not against it. You what do you think he's good? You think he's good that he did that? And I was like, hey man, hold up. Wait a second. The fuck is wrong with you? You accusing me of something that I don't agree with. And you making an accusation about me being, in favor of. That's not what I said. What I said was, I don't know. And he, so we got onto this conversation after he calmed down for a second there. We got into this conversation about, why I did not know, why I was up in the air about it. And I told him, well, maybe because of my background, maybe because of the things that I've done. I was a union steward for 25 years. I did a lot of investigations. I did a lot of grievances. I was the chief job steward, things of that nature. So, I'm skeptical always when I hear a story, especially a story that there's so many red flags about. I don't believe people because they tell me to believe them. I listen to and if that's all I got to go by, there's a lot of questions. If I hear A side and B side, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but there's always an A side, a B side, and the truth lies in the middle. Just because people feel a certain way doesn't mean that you're right. If you're offended by something, it doesn't mean you're right. Now, don't get me wrong. Anytime that any of us, I would imagine this, that any of us hear that story that came out of the New York Times, it's going to invoke a feeling in all of us that, is a bad feeling. And I understand that. Then it's like, wow, as you start to read the article and you start to not just read the headline and then make your emotion based on the headline, that makes it really interesting because a lot of the things that I read, I had questions about, like, wow, okay, this isn't good. Okay, it's not good, but I have questions. So I found it quite interesting that this person was already jumping to a conclusion based on one side or a story. And I'm like, okay, that's not a good thing, but we have to understand and look at things because we live in a country that we're told that you are innocent until proven guilty. Now, being innocent until proven guilty carries a lot of weight for the simple reason is that we have due process. Well, here's Here's a multiple set of problems. And I think we're going to have these things continuously moving forward because of the allegations of grape and other things. If you're telling me that something happened 60 years ago or 50 years ago or 30 years ago, there's a problem aligning the things that happened. So with that problem comes these issues that we have, like, okay, well, how do we vet this out? And how do you vet it out if you don't have the whole story? You got a side of the story. So that's why I said I don't know. What's weird about this is I'm not the only one that this is happening to. I recently went back down to the 805 to go visit friends and family, and I had this discussion with people that I was talking with, some of my friends. I had this discussion and I asked the question, hey, what do you think about this? And what they were telling me was, I got a lot of pushback. When people asked me the question, I was like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, and I was like, wow, you had a similar experience. I mean, this experience of people automatically categorizing you because you don't align with their position. So automatically you're the bad person instead of just asking a question. I'm not saying I'm for, I'm not saying I'm against. I'm just saying that I don't know what's happening with this Cesar Chavez thing. All I know and all I can see and hear and feel is this is moving really fast. The fact that it's moving this quickly, we're taking down signs, we're taking down statues, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm thinking, why there's no corroborating evidence. Like, I'll take the specific thing, which is Huerta's situation, Dolores Huerta. She's made an accusation. I don't know if it's true. She says it. It's a terrible thing. But there's no corroborating evidence. There's nothing that says in the timeline that, that this happened during this time. Now, I know that it happened between her first and second marriage, that it happened during her second marriage. I believe a year or two before she got divorced in her second marriage, which causes me to think like, okay, well, if she got pregnant during her marriage, wouldn't the father know? Like, wouldn't her husband kind of have a thing? And as I was reading the New York Times, and I was reading not just the New York Times, but in her statement, she said that she averted anybody noticing her being pregnant by wearing baggy clothes. Okay, all right. I don't know. Is that possible? Is it probable that your husband doesn't know? Like, your husband's never didn't see you pregnant? Your kids didn't see you pregnant? She had already had kids from her first marriage and her second marriage while she got pregnant, supposedly by or she got pregnant by Cesar Chavez. So it causes me a question. My question is, how did you hide that? Now, excuse me, being in the union and dealing with strikes and or possible strikes and protest and engaging in those kinds of things, your core group, which she was part of, the core group with Cesar Chavez and his brother Richard, who she later hooked up with. That's a tight-knit group. You're in that group constantly. Like, you're always in there, especially when you're fighting things and you're organizing and you're trying to do this and you're trying to do that. It's a tight community. Like, there's only 10 to 12 people in the room if you guys are big. There's only 10 to 12 people in the room. And if you're small, there's less. And I'm telling you, to tell me, it just causes that trigger to go off, that red flag to say, well, you hid that, you hid that from your husband, you hid that from your kids, you hid that from your coworkers. I don't know. The story sounds kind of fishy. So that was just my first question. Like, oh, okay, is it possible? Probably. Is it? I don't know, and that's where I don't know. But, the likelihood of that happening without anybody else knowing, I don't know. That's really thin. That's really thin to me, and I don't know, maybe to you. But, other things that, that came up, which is the timelines of everything. The timelines between her first husband, her second husband, her pregnancy from Chavez, and then she got divorced, and then, um, uh, I wanna say that she got pregnant in '63 with Chavez. She'd known Chavez since I want to say 1955, and then put together. They got put together on this this thing. God, I forgot the name of the union. It was before the Farm Workers Union, and as they put together the Farm Workers Union in 1960, that's when she was like exclusively working in the same circles as Chavez and his brother Richard. So when we think about those things, like, okay, now she's working alongside Chavez and Richard, Cesar and Richard, you know, she gets divorced from her first husband and married to her second husband in 1960, gets divorced in 65, gets pregnant from Cesar Chavez in 63. Um, that's okay. That's kind of a weird timeline of things and as insane that you don't know. I shouldn't have an I don't know in that. But is it possible? Yeah. So now we move forward. So she gets divorced in 65. And then another incident happens in God, I want to say 66. I think 1966, where she apparently he SA'd her, Chavez SA'd her in a field, and she got pregnant again from that, and then again gave that child away, which is weird because when you're working in a environment like that, with the community the way it is, giving your kid up for adoption wasn't really an outlet back then. Um, giving the child to a family member and, moving on that way, that was more prevalent of the time. So I find it odd that, these timelines don't really match up well with the culture, with the situation. But I understand because she was saying that she didn't want to bring shame or any kind or derail the Farm Workers Association and how they were doing their organization. So I understand that part. But again, I'm like, okay, whatever. So in 1966, she gets rid of the second baby and gives the baby up for adoption somewhere to somebody. She doesn't name any of those things. But moving forward, in 19, I believe it was 1970 or 1971, which is about 4 years, maybe 5 years after that incident, she winds up hooking up with Richard Chavez. And they stay together until his death, in I believe 91. I'm not really sure. I got to double check that date. But so she's with him the entire time. Okay. Now, here's what I find in additional problems that I see when I hear that story, and it's like, okay, those are the timelines. So she continued to work with the head, which was Cesar Chavez, and now she's hooked up with her brother, or his brother. That's interesting because Cesar Chavez and Richard Chavez were very, very close. Not close like, well, they work past each other. No, they were literally in the same rooms together until Cesar Chavez's death. They were in the same rooms together constantly. He was his number one uh um confidant in everything that he did. And they were, I mean, almost inseparable. So again, there we lie when the new thing of like, shit, well, now he's real tight with his brother. He hooked up with, Dolores. And, I don't know. I feel weird about this. And as I continue to read more and more, and all I do is read. That's all I'm doing is reading this stuff. And through her own, per her own omission, she kept it secret from Cesar Chavez that she got pregnant the first time and the second time, that he never, ever knew. Also,